Hello friends, I am Dr. Urmi Satyan from SLS PDEU, and for today's discussion, I have selected Chitra Banerjee's short story collection, The Unknown Errors of Our Lives. These stories exhibit diaspora sensibility, and so first we need to understand what is diaspora and what is diaspora sensibility. So let us start the lecture. We all know that the concept of identity is primary as well as a complex point of discussion in diaspora studies. The term diaspora finds its roots in Greek language and is etymologically divided into two parts, that is dia meaning over and spero meaning to spread, to scatter. Simply speaking, any community that gets scattered away from its homeland is diaspora. Such communities would obviously come in contact with different lifestyles and with the passing of time adopt and get adapted to the new traits of life. Due to these cultural contexts, the identity of the diaspora also evolves. Indian diaspora manifests this meaning with its remarkable presence across the globe. This manifestation is not only about the physical presence, it is also about recreating a home that gives them homelandly vibe. As Uma Parmeshwaran rightly says, home is where your feet are and may your heart be there too. In the unfavorable case of culture clash, the feelings of homesickness or in some severe cases, the feelings of homelessness develop and the diasporic finds himself or herself on the threshold that divides the homeland and the hostland cultures. These discordant feelings give way to the diaspora sensibilities. Now, India is a pluralistic country. We have various regional languages, dietary practices, dressing patterns, and traditional rituals. Indian diaspora carries this vividness along with them to their adopted lands of opportunities. We can trace the footprints of diaspora majorly by studying the types of diaspora, that is either forced or self-willed migration, the times of diaspora, that is the colonial or the post-colonial time, and the topologies of diaspora, that is the continents or the countries where the migrants are settled. Indian diaspora adopts many socio-cultural aspects of their host land. However, the amazing fact is that they protect the basic feature of plurality by maintaining a strong relation with India, by visiting India often, by sending remittance back home, by letting India know their stories of struggle and success. Also, on their host land, they create intercultural groups or associations. They actively participate in the ethno-traditional festivities, spread the oral literature of the homeland, and thus register their vigorous membership in the socio-cultural as well as economic and political institutions of the adopted lands. Very recently, our Foreign Minister Shri S. Jaishankar has rightly called Indian diaspora as the agents of change and the asset in India's foreign policy. We also know that Prime Minister Modi calls Indian diaspora as the ambassador of Indian culture. And now, roughly after 200 years of migration to different corners of the globe, Indian diaspora shines bright. This flagship of Indian heritage is more glorious with Rishi Sunak of the Indian origin as the British Prime Minister. So, with this brief introduction to the concept of diaspora, let us now discuss Chitra Banerjee's anthology, The Unknown Errors of Our Lives. This anthology captures the diaspora sensibilities through various fictional characters who oscillate between two worlds, one left behind and the other is of their dreams. Some of them disconnect to the past, some are judgmental, and some synergize with both the worlds and evolve progressively. Many of them are relatively practical and considerably focused, and so prioritize between their emotional and rational connections with the home or host lands respectively. The first story in the anthology, Mrs. Datta writes a letter, depicts the life of an old widow, Mrs. Datta, who migrates from India to the US but finds herself a misfit there. Mrs. Datta experiences cultural shock when her motherly devotion is ignored by her son and his wife. For a traditional woman like Mrs. Datta, love and care for family are natural sources of happiness, whereas she finds that her love and care are neglected as stereotypical attributes of a doting mother, though she gains confidence and comes back to India. The second story, The Intelligence of the Wild Things, uses allegorical references and interior monologue as the key instruments to give voice to the diaspora sensibility. The story explores how migration affects the family ties and makes them defensive about their emotional links. The female protagonist of the story is caught in a triangle of an ambitious husband, dependent brother, and an ailing mother in India. The cultural differences between homeland and hostland are found challenging and demanding, and as the mediator, she faces difficulties in bridging over the cultural as well as communicational gaps. The plot of the third story, The Lives of Strangers, is innovative as it presents the issue of belongingness through the America-born Indian woman Leela, who passes through the emotional drifts of acceptance, rejection, inclusion, and exclusion. Born and raised in American culture, this young protagonist, Leela, is encouraged for privacy by her parents. They themselves are solitary individuals, belonging to the noisy and messy India that compels them to escape India and take up research positions in America. Leela is nothing but a shadow of her parents, self-imposed isolation due to their lack of confidence. The fourth story, The Love of a Good Man, presents the psychological challenges that a diasporic experiences on an adopted land. Monisha, the female protagonist in this story, marries Dilip, an Indian settled in America. But with the passing of time, she realizes that she is not a center of her life. Chitra Banerjee is poignant in showing how Monisha, the female protagonist, notices that her anxiety due to the lack of love, care and concern is similar to that of her mother's, who is all alone back in India. She remembers her mother's woe for being abandoned by a husband who wanted to have a new life in America. Years after herself being settled but not adapted to the American life, she remembers the truth hidden in her mother's proverbial statement. The love of a good man can save your life. However, her mother's death due to cancer and loneliness creates emotional vacuum, and she attaches a counter rejoinder to her mother's proverb and says, "The loss of love, even if it is not a good man's, can kill you." The title story, The Unknown Errors of Our Lives, is written in the first person narration. The narrator, Adit, depicts how the cross-culture contact takes a route from ambitiousness to mundaneness due to cultural differences and cultural clashes. For a diasporic like Adit, the ethnic culture works as at an unconscious level. The adopted culture has a utilitarian purpose, and so when the heritage culture comes in contact with the adopted culture, the diasporic experiences an emotional oscillation between the two. One finds the ethnic way of life simple and normal, whereas it astonishes him or her to see the other with a completely different set of value systems and habits. This astonishment sometimes gets mounted into an awe and widens the cultural gaps between the self and the other. One is culturally rooted in the home country and so develops feelings that the other is not the way he or she is. The sixth story, named The Blooming Season for Cacti, portrays bitter experiences and violence led by xenophobia. Banerjee's diasporic characters celebrate their early economic freedom, but culturally they are led towards nothingness. The characters enthusiastically migrate to their land of dreams. They are super confident about success and ignorant about the hurdles embedded in fulfilling their dreams. Banerjee presents characters who have snapped ties with their roots and are trying hard to assimilate into the mainstream of their host country, and subsequently they occupy the place between success and failure. With a few symbolic references, the story What the Body Knows draws our attention to the protagonist Aparna's oscillation between her acquired freedom and cultural inheritance. The first is the notion to follow the heart's will, and the later is to feel the need to preserve cultural identity. The major part of the story is set in Aparna's house and the labor room, where she gives birth to a child, but due to some complications, she could neither see nor feed her child. This story heightens Chitra's artful presentation of body as a living entity and its silent yet timely and meaningful signals showing its sentient presence. It is the body that signals that she will have a premature delivery. It is the body that allows her to experience the leisure of maternity leave and so also the free time to be a wanderer and a dreamer. In the next story, The Forgotten Children, the female protagonist muses over her father's frequent transfers in job, forcing her brothers and her own childhood to live in bits and pieces. They had to leave places before knowing their friends fully. The child narrator of the story is amazed to see a happy family of 4 as portrayed in some hoarding. All her life she chases the embossed happiness of the family in the poster, but on contemplation she notices how starkly her life is different to that of the posters. The story also highlights how interdependent an Indian family is, where a brother and sister are inseparable despite one being a lover of fantasies and the other a pragmatic one, and where a husband and wife are tangled together beyond the power of extrication. The child narrator wants to rub off the words like fear, fracture, furious, fatal, and even father. This fantasy ends with both of them getting covered under a snow dune. The abusive and tormenting father, the beseeching mother, the abrupt and unsettling transfers, the hand-to-mouth economic condition, and all in all, the fatal result of their parents' love marriage force the children to weave one more fantasy where their father was dead. The last story is The Names of Stars in Bengali. This story depicts the fluctuations between the past and the present, the developing and the developed country. One is rural and the other is ultra-modern, between a simple and a stylish life. This story is woven around the emotional flux that an Indo-American woman passes through on her visit to her hometown in Calcutta. Though she is born and brought up in a village, she is highly ambitious to achieve her goals. She fights with her family for higher studies and marries an American non-Hindu against her family's will. After marriage, she settles in San Francisco. Her husband has high esteem for Hindu religion. Life in America is too hectic for her. She accepts the unproclaimed standardized aspects of American lifestyle and molds herself to fit into the American frame. Her search for home remains endless. Thus, Chitra presents the diaspora sensibilities of Indians through the fictional narration of their experiences, prospects, aspirations, success stories, failures, angers, and anxieties, and also their prospective and progressive ways of maintaining their ties with their old and new affiliations. So, I wrap up here and leave you to read these stories of the unknown errors of our lives for more clarity. Bye for now.